This is YNN Legal Eagle.
The prosecution's final accuser took the stand Thursday in the Jerry Sandusky child sex abuse trial. The former Penn State assistant football coach faces 52 counts. All week, the jurors heard graphic and disturbing testimony from several alleged victims.
These young men, victim 3 included, are disclosing sexual abuse on someone else's timeline, and they are doing it on an extraordinarily public stage, and it took a great deal of courage to do that.
The Commonwealth is expected to rest their case Monday. Here to discuss how effective the prosecution's strategy has been is our very own legal eagle, Paul DerOhannesian. Paul, thanks for being here.
Good to see you, Erin.
Good to see you. So first off, some of the victims' stories have been inconsistent. Is there any reason for the prosecution to be concerned?
Oh, that's right. One of the things the defense has done is shown that there are differences in how they've described incidents and the number of incidents. The problem is when you have so many victims talking about so many different incidents and they're not connected in any way, they don't seem to have any reason to have gotten together, these inconsistencies seem very unimportant in the defense of this case in terms of being a significant factor.
So how did these investigators find the victims? How did they actually finally come forward after all these years?
Well, some had come forward before and actually maybe made some complaints, but some of them were identified actually through a book that Jerry Sandusky wrote, an autobiography ironically called Touched, in which he spoke about some of these children. And so it's his words in his book that led to some of the victims, which again kind of negates the idea that the kids got together to bring up and make these allegations.
It seems to me like the trial's moving fairly quickly. Is it a fast trial?
Well, look, this is a case involving 10 different victims, 8 of whom have testified. This is incredibly fast, but I think it's also incredibly effective. The prosecution hasn't really wallowed in detail. The jury has been, according to all accounts, interested, paying attention. So it's moved very fast and also very effectively, and it shows you don't need to drag things on to be effective.
Last question for you, Paul. Did we learn any more about how the abuse was allowed to continue? Why did no one put a stop to it?
You see day after day the fact that sometimes parents didn't pay attention to the messages and questions of children. And of course you found that there was a janitor who didn't report what he saw in the shower, that Mike McQuarrie did report it to school administrators. They did nothing. In fact, the university vice president reportedly this week had a file on Sandusky. And finally, you've got a district attorney who a police officer testified had sufficient information to prosecute Sandusky and chose not to. It's really sad, and it shows you how Sandusky was permitted by adults and authorities to continue this sexual abuse over decades.
All right, that's our legal eagle, Paul DerOhannesian. Paul, thanks.
My pleasure.
And stick around. In our next Legal Eagle segment, Paul will be back to talk about how Sandusky's lawyers plan to present their case.